Throughout the United States, there are millions of students that are deaf or hard of hearing. Deafness is considered a disability in the United States, and it is important to know what deafness is in regards to children and students. The legal definition of deafness, defined by the Department of Education, is as follows. Deafness means a hearing impairment that is so severe that a child is impaired in processing linguistic information through hearing, with or without amplification. The sound of hearing is measured in decibels. The medical definition of legal deafness is 66 to 85 decibels of hearing loss. On a scale of hearing loss degrees, this is considered severe. Anything over 85 decibels of hearing loss is considered profound. The definition of deafness in layman's terms is any loss or inability to hear that prevents a child from hearing efficiently. There are prevalence rates when it comes to deafness in children. 14.9% of children 6 to 19 years old have low or high frequency hearing loss of at least 16 decibels hearing level in one or both ears. There are different levels of hearing loss. The first level is mild, the second one is moderate, the third is severe, and the fourth level is profound. There are prevalence rates when it comes to deafness in children. 14.9% of children. Students who are deaf or hard of hearing are not all at the same level with hearing loss. There are four main levels of hearing loss. The first is mild, where students may have trouble hearing soft-spoken people and hear more intense vowel words rather than soft consonant words. A lot of the time, they ask for someone to speak up or to repeat themselves. The second level is moderate hearing loss. With moderate hearing loss, a student will have the same reaction to those who have mild hearing loss, but not be able to hear more vowel-sounding words. They may also not be able to understand what is being said to them.
Third level of hearing loss is severe. At this level, students cannot hear anything unless they have hearing aids or cochlear implants. When students are young or at a severe level of hearing loss, they can still learn how to read lips, which many children do. The fourth level of hearing loss is profound. This level of hearing loss, students definitely need a hearing aid or implants to hear. They will not even be able to hear loud sounds.
There are many warning signs in children that are deaf. At times their speech may be delayed, and it may even be slurred, or both. They often say common words such as huh or what because they are not hearing what someone is saying to them. Another warning sign is that if a child is old enough, they may sit closer to television or turn the volume up high. One last warning sign that is very common in the child is not listening to directions. The child that is deaf sometimes is mistaken for not paying attention, not listening, or looking like they are just plain ignoring you when in reality they cannot hear you. There are many warnings. Some people that do not have full knowledge of deafness in children assume a lot of things surrounding a deaf child. The first myth is that students who are deaf are seen as poor communicators. This is far from the truth. Children that are deaf actually have several ways to communicate and learn to communicate. Sign language is the most common way to communicate with children that are deaf. Some are eligible for implants along with several technologies that help them at school and at home. Some people that do not have full knowledge of deafness in children assume a lot of things surrounding a deaf child. The first myth is that students who are deaf are seen as poor communicators. Another myth about deaf and hard of hearing students is that they are often seen as being less intelligent, less successful in the classroom. However, deaf and hard of hearing students often struggle with homework and tests based on their literacy and reading skills. Therefore, these students should be assessed based on their individually paced, competency-based assignments. Another myth about deaf and hard of hearing students is that they are often seen as being less intelligent, less successful in the classroom. However, deaf and hard of hearing students often struggle with homework and tests based on their literacy and reading skills. Therefore, these students should be assessed. A final myth about children that are deaf or hard of hearing is they all have the same type of hearing loss. This is not the case. No two cases of hearing loss are the same. Each is unique to the individual and should be treated as such. Just because a student has hearing loss doesn't mean they should be treated the same as another student with hearing loss. It is important for these students to be evaluated and taught on an individual basis. A final myth about children that are deaf or hard of hearing is they all have the same type of hearing loss. This is not the case. No two cases of hearing loss are the same. Each is unique to the individual and should be treated as. When a student is deaf or hard of hearing, there are several instructional strategies that can be used with them. One instructional strategy that can be used is to inquire about the student's language history and communication preferences. If the student is young, families and other professionals may need to be involved in the conversation so that you can plan to support language development and vocabulary acquisition accordingly. This will allow teachers to better understand the difficulties the child faces and build a program accordingly. When a student is deaf or hard of hearing, there are several instructional strategies that can be used with them.
Instructional strategy is to set a classroom's expectations for having only one speaker at a time. This expectation is particularly helpful for deaf and hard of hearing students with a range of communication preferences. A problem may occur if there are several teachers or people in the class at once and a student may not be able to understand or catch up to what they are saying. A third instructional strategy is to create visual representations for oral explanations. Depending on their level of hearing loss, deafness, or hard of hearing students may not have full access to oral explanation throughout the day. Therefore, they might not understand what their other peers are. It is important to put visuals around the room for them to understand the classwork and have something to refer to. A fourth instructional strategy used for students that are deaf or hard of hearing is to make sure that you understand the accommodations or technology that these students use. It's important to support other students as they learn this as well. Until a teacher is certain that a student that is hard of hearing or deaf is a good self-advocate, it is important to have daily checks of the equipment by a designated adult. A fifth instructional strategy is that students who are deaf or hard of hearing often benefit from a flipped classroom. A flipped classroom is defined as moving instructional activities outside the classroom, often outlining the work, then doing homework in the classrooms. The ability to do content-based work outside the class allows them to participate in the classroom better and respond with a higher level of satisfaction in a more inclusive environment. A sixth instructional strategy is to remember that the Common Individual Education Plan, also known as IEP accommodation, preferential seating. Preferential seating means that a student's seat is in the location of the classroom that is most beneficial for them to learn. It is not just for the whole group instruction, but also applies to small group and independent work. Students who are deaf or hard of hearing have assistive technologies that help them hear better and communicate better. Some of the most common ones are FM systems that transmit sounds directly from a microphone worn by a teacher to an individual with a hearing aid or implant. There are also coupling devices for connecting media devices such as computers, TVs, tablets, and smartphones. There are also technology devices that convey information visually. There are visual alerting devices such as fire alarms, smoke detectors, and phone alerting equipment that have lights when they go off or a vibration that the students can feel. There are also devices that let you know when the doorbell is rung and they can see. Another device used is real-time transcription systems. These systems provide instant translation into a language using a stenotype machine, notebook computer, and real-time software. This is useful when students are listening to a lecture so they can go back at it at a later time, and captioning also that you see on the TV. About 2 to 3 out of every 1,000 children in the United States are born with a detectable level of hearing loss in one or both ears. More than 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents. Deafness and hard of hearing is not genetic. 1 in 8 people in the United States, aged 12 years or older, have hearing loss in both ears based on standard hearing examinations.